All good? You should make a pitch for my resilience for
Okay, go ahead.
Yes?
Good afternoon. Welcome, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to this panel on the Water Day, where we propose to discuss the urgency of adaptation to improve resilience of water supply systems. I would also like to thank our guests who are online, who are viewing us online. So my name is Mônica Porto. I'm the head for ESG at Sabesp. Sabesp is the water utility for the state of São Paulo. It's the third largest water utility in the world. Sabesp is honored in hosting such a high-level panel, for which I would like to thank our distinguished panelists. We have the honor to receive His Excellency Professor Suelen, Minister of Water Resources and Irrigation of Egypt. His Excellency will be here in a few minutes. So I would like to give the floor to Professor Ben Braga for his welcoming remarks and his considerations on the importance of adaptation.
Thank you, Monica. Welcome everybody to this high-level panel where we, as Sabesp, are very interested in sharing with you some concerns that we're having regarding adaptation to climate change. I would like to start this presentation with some information regarding the metropolitan region of São Paulo, where Sabesp operates since 1973. This is the 7th most populated region worldwide, and with a very dense population of 2,700 inhabitants per square kilometers. Here I show to you, there's a lot of sounds around here. I hope you can hear me. I will speak very loud, maybe louder than the other one speaking outside. And then here is how in the last century São Paulo has evolved from a small city to one of the largest conurbations in the world. Do we have a mic? Here is the metropolitan region of São Paulo with 22 million. Okay, it's working. So 8 water treatment systems providing 76,000 liters per second for this 22 million people. And I would like to, well, this is the metropolitan region of Sao Paulo, and it extends for 130 kilometers in this region of Brazil. And Cantareira system is the largest system providing water for this very populated area. It is made by 5 reservoirs interconnected by tunnels and with a pumping station that elevates the water 120 meters over the mountain range, and it's treated here at Guaraú water treatment plant. This is with a nominal capacity of 33,000 liters per second. So you can appreciate the size of the challenge that we have to provide water for this large population. 9 million people are served by this system. And here is how the drought of 2014 developed from 2012 reaching here a very complex situation in the state. This is how the media and local, national and international referred to this very difficult situation. Here is a graph where I show to you the average flows, inflows, annual inflows for 84 years of data. And you can appreciate that from January to December, the flows varies a lot. There is a very important seasonal pattern. But the important is that in 2014, the largest flood, the most, not flood, but drought, the largest drought we had was 53 to 54, 1953, 1954, and with half of the average. And then in 2014, we have half of the half, 25% of the inflows to this situation. This is how the reservoirs came in 2014. Here is, I don't know if you can see it well, but this is water, and here is all dry, all dry, all dry. And this is how it looks with only 46% of reservation of water. So how did we went to solve this problem? First, tapping dead storage that there was in the reservoir, pumping with pumps in the surface of the reservoir, economic incentives to help people to use water more rationally, water transfers among the 8 systems that I showed to you, and night water pressure reduction in order to reduce leakages and losses of water. So with this, the production of water, 73 cubic meters per second. This is sufficient to provide for 22 million people. But due to the situation we went through, we had to reduce 21,000 liters per second of consumption. And this was a result of the night pressure reduction, of the economic incentives, and due to the wholesale water that we provided to some municipalities in São Paulo. And here you can appreciate the kind of civil works that were necessary to tap the dead storage. And here it's the kind of work that was done. Here I show to you the other works that were accelerated from the planning we had. These interbasin transfers from nearby basins inside the metropolitan region were done in such a way that some of these works were planned for 2027, 2028, and we managed to get them on 2018. So this was a very important work. This is Jaguari, Atibainha, São Lourenço. And we thought we had resolved the problem with all these measures, and that the probability of that flood, that drought was very low, 0.4% probability. However, as time went by, we realized that the drought was back again. So 2022, we had a situation similar to that one. You see, here in this graph, I show to you the inflows, annual inflows to Cantareira. And you see in the dotted line is the average, long-term average. Long-term average, 42.5 cubic meters per second. In the last decade, the average, 25.5. And if you look here, since 1996, the inflows to the Cantareira are going down, showing that the stationarity of the series is now no longer valid for our planning. So as you can see, climate change is already showing there for the last 20 years. And how is this going to end? We really don't know. So here is a graph of the percentage storage in the Cantareira since 1914. We had to tap the dead volume storage. And then the reservoir started going up. Oops, look, January 2020, almost went down to tap the dead storage. And if we did not have done all those civil works and all those works of demand management, this is what would have happened. Collapse. No water for São Paulo metropolitan region. However, due to the works we've done, this is what happened with the inflows from the interbasin transfers, with people consuming more rationally, with the control of the pressures at night. This is what happened. The reservoir today is with 31.8 of its storage. So, what is the message here? We're talking about climate, global warming. However, water is the most impacted natural resource due to climate change. Water is essential for all forms of economic and social development. If we do not care about water, then we will suffer with food, with water supply, and sanitation. Climate is already changing. I've shown you here what is the situation in the metropolitan of São Paulo. More resilient water supply systems in both rural and urban areas is necessary. And adaptation to climate change is urgent. Why is urgent? Because all the last 27 years, this conference of parties has been focused on energy. On energy, that the problems are going to be faced 200 years from now. What I've shown to you here is something we're going through now, at this moment. So, look at Article 7 of the Paris Agreement. And we here at this conference should call the attention of decision makers, chief of states, presidents, ministers, that this is the problem we're facing. And we should put more strength in this subject than in the energy that we have been discussing for a long time. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Professor Braga, for bringing attention to the urgent need for adaptation. I think that our case in Sabesp in São Paulo is really important because it shows that with working on both sides, on supplying, on increasing our water security, on investing in infrastructure for improving the systems to give more flexibility, to be more efficient in our operation, but also to work in the side of demand management. Both sides show that they gave results, and the system for São Paulo, can you imagine having 22 million people in a city that and to have the water supply to collapse. So it's, I think that Sabesp, we are really happy to be here, so to share our experience, and I think that more important than that is that we could do all that without raising the tariffs. Tariffs of Sabesp in Brazil are the fifth lower tariff. So even so, we, by making the right technical decisions and by investing properly, and also by negotiating with the regulator, we could implement all this, so that we are really happy here to share our success. So I would like to invite Mr. Youssef Nassef, the UNFCCC Director on Adaptation, for your considerations. Thank you for accepting our invitation. Please, the floor is yours.
You over there.
Oh, it's up to you.
Okay, so I'll remain comfortable, and thank you very much for inviting me to this meeting, and a special thanks to Sabesp and to Professor Braga for the wonderful partnership that exists between the company and between this organization. And welcome to the UNFCCC Pavilion to everyone. So I was very inspired by the final intervention from Professor Braga, calling for elevating the importance of adaptation in this process. And we've been seeing over the past years or past decades that the first two priorities that are always identified by countries in their reporting requirements are always water and agriculture. And the thing is that they've been doing this since the start of the reporting process, and it's still the same today. So which means that action is not catching up with perceived vulnerability. Now, we're at the border of two different phases. Yesterday is different from what we anticipate tomorrow. We used to have adaptation being treated in a piecemeal manner, small projects. Now we're elevating, we're calling for scaling up, we're calling for countrywide approaches, national adaptation plans, and a lot more financial support being given to it, a lot more technological and capacity building support. Now, what does that mean as we scale up? We notice a few emerging priorities that I think are coming into the international sphere that I think need some attention from us. The first one is the silification of water as its own sector without building bridges to other areas, and looking in a more integrated fashion at how water links adaptation to mitigation, how it links to health, how it links to food security, how it links to a lot of other priorities as we move towards the achievement of the SDGs and achievement of any developmental priorities of a country. Right now, we deal with it as its own thing, because typically countries have a water ministry, an agriculture ministry, a health ministry. So building those bridges as we move forward in the climate change process and elevating and scaling up action to address water is, I think, something we are still lacking, even methodologically. Linked to that is the notion of maladaptation. So, and also that one size does not fit all. So I know of a concrete project for water harvesting in one country in Africa that was very successful and was replicated in an identical fashion on the next country, which proved not to work at all because it became a breeding ground for malaria. So thinking that one action can be replicated because it is successful in one place without due consideration of the actual local context, whether in terms of geography or even culture, is something that, as we scale up, becomes a bit more prominent. Third is transboundary considerations, which are pretty much prominent in the water sector far more than anything else, but also other shared ecosystems. How do we deal with, as climate change exacerbates and water shortages can become a thing, for example, shared river basins, an adaptation action by one country can become an increased vulnerability to another if it holds off more water than can flow. This is another complexity that actually international law hasn't been able to tackle very well. Now, water is, as you said, it's an entry point for a lot of climate action. It's an enabler of resilience. It's an enabler of life on Earth. But how then do we look at intergenerational equity when we look at water? And we get a lot of our input from the values of indigenous peoples, and I'm very happy that we have here the co-chair of the expert group that promotes this issue on indigenous peoples. And when we typically do cost-benefit analyses in economics, we have a discount rate, the time value of money, which in this case discounts future costs and benefits, those of future generations, in comparison to today's costs and benefits. So what I'm trying to say is our current systems, international policymaking and national policymaking, has an inherent bias towards short-termism, frankly. And when we deal with climate change and think of 2030, 2050, 2100, we have to think through a different mindset if we want to make sure that our actions today do not necessarily take away from the benefits for future generations. So those are some of the components of my thinking as we move forward on how the discourse on water will have to evolve in this process. You might have heard also about the loss and damage discussion, and inherently that is an optimization story of how much do you do to reduce risk before a hazard materializes versus how much should you leave for after the impact takes place in terms of ex post action, whether it's insurance or planned relocation or emergency support for impacted peoples. And so I just tried to give you a small mosaic of the emerging issues that relate to our negotiations here insofar as water is concerned. And with here, I will stop and give back to you, Madam Moderator. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Nassef, for your important considerations. I think that pointing out the importance of adaptation in the discussion of climate change, as UNFCCC has been doing, it really sends a message for all the water sector to how we have to work in the future. So now I would like to invite your Royal Highness, Princess Abze Djigma.
Fantastic.
And for your considerations. Thank you very much for being here, for accepting our invitation. Thank you.
Thank you very much for having me. First of all, I really want to thank Professor. He's a professor, because last year in Glasgow, he made a presentation, and that was my best takeaway home. And when I arrived, I spoke to my Minister of Foreign Affairs and Collaboration that I find the solution to implement, to contextualize, because Youssef rightly said that we need to put solutions within the context, and that is totally right. And the idea on reducing the pressure that you gain, that is such bright, simple, but we got to do it. Those are concrete ideas, but for me, being in this panel is to emphasize I have an echo, maybe it's this one, sorry. There is an echo. Thank you, now it goes well, thank you very much. I think that the importance of South-South cooperation is very critical, and that's where comes in the UNFCCC bodies can help for that South-South cooperation. And Youssef didn't say that, but we were in Botswana, and by the end of September, on the resilience frontier, he brings us to think, to crack in our minds, how are we going to think the world in 2000 and 3000 even, when we won't be here. How are we thinking our urban way of living? How are we managing our waste? How are we thinking our education? How are we going to transform that? How are we going to feed ourselves? How are we going to interact one with each other? How we will continue calling the world? And we have been thinking, and water, if you remember, we have the kings and we have the king of water. Just to emphasize what you were saying, water is really critical. if we don't find a way to manage water within the value chain of business. If I take, for instance, the mining sector, it's using a lot of water. How are we going with technology to depollute the water before we send it back to our rivers? Because it's impact also our food security, as you rightly said. In Burkina Faso, for instance, we can learn a lot. We still can learn from you, because we're building our bridges, but often, as you say, we need to find a way. How are we going to, within the law, because you may put a dam in your country, but it's create another a flood to my country. That's what happened to Nigeria, where they lost more than 500,000 people. We really need, I think, to next COP, to bring it to the agenda, how to think about that, because this is really critical. South-South cooperation, I talked in Burkina Faso, you suffer from drought. We had a Nobel Prize called Yakuba Sawadgo, who has an alternative Nobel Prize, who reforested 40 hectares using the indigenous knowledge, which called the Zai in my mother tongue. We dig just a little wall and fertilize us, and it was an entire desert, really a desert as we speak. Those are the expertise that we can share with you. And you as well, you can share with us. And academia is very important. We also can green our academia to adapt the curricula to our current situation, because sometimes we may have the solutions, but actually the curricula is not updated. But you are a professor, and I invite you to encourage your fellows to put it, and also to help them write the curricula. Because often you have some students who want to learn more how to deal with the climate impact, but the teachers don't know how to bring it to them, how to humanize the UN process, how to humanize the Paris Agreement. What does this mean for them on a daily basis? When they go to buy something, using their consumer power to make the industry change their way of, that's the only way that we can, and use also the citizen power and voting to attract the attention of our ministers, our MPs, even our mayors, to ask them when they do their development plan, how green it is, what are the impact, and listen also, bring on board those that they don't have those that they don't used to talk with. Maybe they got the solution, but even if you don't like that person, bring him around the table. I think if you learn how to listen, you will go further. So I will stop there. Thank you very much for having me, and I learned again today with Professor. Thank you for having me.
So, Your Excellency, the Minister, thank you very much for coming. So, if you could please give us your remarks on adaptation. Thank you.
It's very interesting to be running between sessions. Okay, so Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, how are you today? So I hope you are enjoying the COP. First of all, welcome in Egypt, and I think that's really great to have such a COP. I'm enjoying moving between the sessions, so I'm not tired. People ask me, are you tired? I say, no, I'm not. But because really, it was a dream for us to position water at the heart of climate action. And today is the water day in the COP27. So it's, for me, it was just like, wow, we can have a water day, although, yeah, let me be positive. So somebody was saying now is a time, I was saying the time of implementation, and somebody was telling me it is the time of post blah, blah, blah. So, I think we are now dealing with implementation of actions on adaptation to climate change, especially when it comes to Africa. We here really support politically and push adaptation and implementation of actions to adapt to climate change. I was talking today many times about the changing happening in the sea level rise, the temperature increase, and the impact on water supply, which is the title of your session, and also how water supply in different sectors is impacted by the level rise. And also, as I said, by the temperature increase. We, as a Ministry of Water Resources, are now asked to provide more water than in the past. Not only because of the increasing population, but also of the increasing demand. The agriculture sector is asking for more water for the same area, for the same crop. The increasing temperature is really increasing the crop water requirements and increasing also the water demand and irrigation requirements. So this is something that, but also observing the climate changes and the meteorological changes happening and how the water should be catched and prepared. We had extreme events, even we are not a rainy country, but in some areas we used to calculate for the flash flood our reservoirs for a certain capacity. Sometimes they are empty, these reservoirs are empty. I was, to make sure that everything is running perfectly, I have to go in the entire surrounding area that the weekend before the COP to make sure if we have flash flood, what will happen. And then we thought, okay, flash flood, we started in the country to calculate our flash flood, which comes 1 or 2 times a year, but when it comes, it hits really. And we were calculating based on 50 years floods or 50 years event. Now we are calculating for 300 years event because the extremes are really going up or down. So even in countries like Egypt, when rainfall is not really a big issue, but when it comes, it really hits the country, and we do have some damages, and that's why we have to adapt to that. And calculating based on 300 years event is really very costly for us, absolutely. So the capacity is increasing enormously, and then at the end it ends up by a very long time of drought, and they are empty. But we need them just to protect the people and the big investments that you see in a city like Sharm el-Sheikh, and hotels and resorts and huge investment. So adaptation is an issue. Adaptation for Africa really is a big deal. And you know, today we launched the AWARE initiative, which is the first ever water initiative for adaptation in climate change. And AWARE stands for Actions for Water Adaptation and Resilience, with main focus on Africa, plus definitely the Mediterranean region, the Arab region, and also other countries that would like to join. This AWARE initiative is for implementation. It has 6 clear work streams that are meant to be divided later on or broke down later on to specific projects with time plan and actions and funding. And that's what we have to do till the end of this year. Until the end of this year, after launching the event or launching this initiative today morning, I had many meetings of international partners who are interested to join, because it is not an Egyptian initiative. It's a global initiative meant to help countries that are really under severe impact of the climate change. And now we are just coordinating the kickoff, and then we will hand it over to the organizations who are going to lead these 6 streams with a specific project. So I just finished meeting after meeting after meeting, and I'm very happy that international organizations are coming and want to implement and also want to take the lead of one of these pillars. So we are hopefully by the end of December this year, we will have the structure and the governance and who is going to lead what, who are the partners, who are the leaders, and then till the water conference, the UN Water Conference in 2023, we will have clear projects, actions, hopefully with clear budget and commitment and time plan that we can present in the UN conference in New York, March 2023. So this is because we are really motivated now to use this movement of water being at the heart of climate and then go to the implementation with, as I said, specific projects. Pray for us, work with us, and let us together go for implementing adaptation actions on the ground for Africa and other countries. Thank you very much. Enjoy the day.
Excellency, I would like to thank very much your presence here with us. It was an honor. And on behalf also, as honorary president of the World Water Council, I would like to thank your presence here with us. Thank you. Thank you very much, Minister.
So, thank you. So going on, I would like to invite Ms. Jennifer Sara, from Global Director of Climate Change for the World Bank, to tell us the important role of the World Bank in providing assistance to adaptation and climate change. So, Ms. Sara, please, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much, Professor Porto. This is also my happiest day at COP, because actually I'm a water person at heart. Many of you might know me. The last 8 years I was the Global Director for Water at the World Bank, and we were jumping up and down saying water and climate, 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 water, adaptation, mitigation. No one listened to us. So now, July 1st, I jumped ship, and I became the Director for Climate Change at the World Bank. And I said, let me bring water that way, because maybe they'll listen to us. So I really want to thank Professor Braga for inviting me to be on this panel. It's an honor to be on the panel with the rest of you as well. And also, when you presented the Sabesp, what happened in Sao Paulo, you make it seem like it was so easy and you solved the problem. I remember when that happened. And I remember how traumatic it is, right? And you can see the Brazilians in the room shaking their head. When you get to, Cape Town too, day 0, this is real. And as you say, it hits communities, it hits people. It's really, really important. So let me speak about 3 things. The importance of analysis, financing, action, okay? So on the analysis at the World Bank, we have a new diagnostic tool. It's called the Country Climate and Development Report, because we believe you have to deliver development, SDGs, help countries with climate. They go hand in hand. I only have one slide. Do you want to just put it up in a second? Thanks. So it looks at an integrated manner, but what's at the heart of the climate, the CCDRs, is that it drills down at country level. So it looks at Brazil, Botswana, China, and Sahel. And you have a real analysis, analytical macroeconomic modeling of how the country can achieve its development objectives, thinking about low carbon emissions trajectory and adaptation resilience. So no surprise, after all these years of saying, hey, how about water and climate? It turns out that on adaptation, CCDRs, water came out everywhere as a top priority. And it's no surprise to us, it was a big surprise to our colleagues, but Egypt, #1 priority, Iraq, Jordan, Morocco, Nepal, Vietnam, Mekong Delta, Argentina, China. Water comes out, which is great, so it's not just mitigation, but it really is water, and it's water linked to everything in adaptation. And it looked at issues of drought, flood protection, water scarcity, sea level rise, groundwater management. And there's been a number of deep dives in each country that come up with policy recommendations, and that's what's really important. What are the policy triggers in specific countries that are needed for the water sector to actually be able to deliver everything that it needs to? So of course it talks about water use efficiency, it talks about pricing, multiple ways of using multi-purpose water storage, like you say. The same water goes from the mine to your mouth, so it has to be cleaned along the way. Coordination across agencies, nature-based solutions, climate-smart agriculture, water-saving technologies, these all came up as policy recommendations and priorities for countries. Also, you have very customized issues. For example, in Vietnam and Bangladesh, they have long, low-lying coastlines, right? So sea level rise is really important for them, saline intrusion. Iraq, the impact of high temperatures on water availability, just like the minister from Egypt just said, is a really, really, really big issue for food security. Ghana looks at the vulnerability for water for hydropower generation. So it really is customized to every single country's situation. Now let's move into financing for adaptation, the poor cousin, as I say. Everyone's willing to pay mitigation, reducing emissions. Adaptation is usually local impact. It's not considered the same global public good. So for us at the bank, we've committed that 35% at least of all of our financing goes to climate finance. So that was $32 billion last year. But 50% goes to adaptation and 50% to mitigation. So when we set a target, we actually can go to countries and really say, this is really also something we can support. Another important thing is measuring the money. And with other multilateral development banks, we've been working on ways of tracking climate finance, and especially adaptation climate finance. In this COP, we released, with UNFCCC also working closely with them, a methodology to track the additionality of how much it costs to be resilient. And it really depends on the type of investment you make. To us, it seems silly that we actually have to do this tracking because we get it as water. That's fundamental. But it's important to leverage additional financing and concessional financing and grant financing, because that's also part of the loss and damage agenda, is to be able to tease that out. So that methodology is available, which we think of use to others. Then finally, let's just talk of how we're moving into action in our portfolio at the bank and supporting countries. Water storage, big and small, green and gray, groundwater, nature-based solutions. It's fundamental. It's fundamental for adaptation, for able to store water, to release it when there's floods, and for mitigation. It's how we protect ourselves from the hydrological cycle. So we have a lot of engagements on water storage. I'm going to skip over very quickly, not give examples, but they're available. Water Secure Cities Initiative, we take from Sao Paulo, and we learn from them. You know, it's no longer just putting water in the pipes so people can have water. Where's the water going to come from, right? So working a lot on that. Lots of good examples in Senegal with the government of Dakar, taking examples from Brazil. And then finally, talking about wastewater reuse and circular economy. It's great, now it's there. Technologies, how important it is that every single drop of water matters. We're saying now sanitation is sexy. We had a panel on methane the other day, and that's what someone said. Sanitation is now sexy, and they care because sanitation, if you treat wastewater, you reduce methane emissions, you create new water, you create fertilizer, and you can maybe get carbon credits. And so that's a great way to finance. So let me stop there, and thank you all very much.
Thank you, Jennifer. Thank you very much for coming with us with all your experience in both in water and in climate. And so it's very rare, so it's very important. So thank you very much. So I think we have time for a couple of questions, maybe? Yes?
Good afternoon to everybody. I'm Eduardo Trani. I'm the Sub-Secretary of Environment of the State of São Paulo, working with Mr. Braga and Sabesp. I'd like to make one question. I think it was very, very interesting, this view altogether of you, and also the Egyptian way of facing the problem. I would ask you to Mr. Braga just one question. How you evaluate the importance of the engagement of the government as a whole, his initiative to integrate the policies to the successful work and the investments of Sabesp in the 2014 crisis? That's the question I would like to listen to Mr. Braga, because I think that Sabesp is the biggest company, and we get through the crisis, as he shows with the number. It also is important to see this engagement of all government, all water secretaries.
This is an excellent question. The company operates independently, practically, because Sabesp has 49.7% of its capital from the private, from people. We are listed in the capital market of São Paulo and New York. However, the situation that showed up in 2014 was beyond the capacity of one single company. Although we're very strong, operating on normal precipitation situation. But in that situation, it was very important that the whole government, several other secretaries operating together with us, including security, because in the situation of a collapse of water, can you imagine people fighting for getting water in different places? We were even planning to have some fountains can you imagine that? Fountains around the city of São Paulo for people to go for water, like in small villages in different countries of the world. So I think your point is very well taken here, that in a situation of crisis, the government, I mean the political people, they have to engage very strongly. And not only that, but after crisis, they have to continue engaged. And that's the reason why we've been spreading out the word that water and climate are very important. Yes, thank you.
Thank you, thank you, thank you, Mr. Braga. Any other questions? So, yes, please.
Hello. Yes, Nasser Al-Attiyah from the state of Qatar. I have a question for the director, Jennifer Sara. Coming from Qatar, there's a severe lack of research, depending on like groundwater, because groundwater is very integrated between Saudi Arabia, between the UAE, between a lot of other parties. And so would it be constructive to first apply the metrics you were talking about to get the recommendations for what we should do regarding groundwater for our agricultural activities, for the activities that they're using currently for the natural gas extraction? Or would it be wiser to, like, is there a framework of organizations that we should approach first to lay down a lot of like needed specialized research for what what we currently need? Because there's a lot that we need to like start off with and approach before we know exactly how to deal with our groundwater.
That's such an excellent question. Groundwater is the hidden gem of water, and very little is known about it, and much of it is transboundary. I remember when I lived in Brazil, the Guarani Aquifer, that was like, trying to get countries to coordinate just around surface water is challenging enough. Do it with groundwater when you can't see it, and you can't see who's extracting it, who's polluting it. So we've been trying, all of us in the water community in the last few years, to really raise the awareness of groundwater. So fully agree with you. In fact, in Africa, we have initiatives now going on with regional institutions. And so this is in the Sahel. We have it in the Horn of Africa and also in Southern Africa, the major aquifers, just to be able to take the scientific evidence to find out how much water is there, but also to build the capacity of African institutions to be able to know. If you don't know what water you have, it's impossible to manage it, it's impossible to share it. So that's incredibly important. Once you know what water is, you have rules, institutional legal rules on how you can use it and extract it. Then you can plan comprehensively between surface water and groundwater in an integrated manner. So fully support this. And I know the UN's done a lot of work also in UNECE on groundwater. I think in December in Paris is there's a very big UNESCO groundwater conference just to bring much more importance to that. I'm sure other people here could add quite a bit on this as well.
Okay, so thank you all very much. We are coming to the end of this panel. So thank you for the panelists for providing us with so many ideas, reflections on the effects of climate change in the water sector. So thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for coming. Thank you for our viewers online. And thank you for being with us on this Water Day. Thank you.